Okay, so we'll start the meeting of the Easthampton Ranked Choice Voting Ad Hoc Committee. It is November 19th.
Correct.
And I'll read this thing. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Easthampton Ranked Choice Voting Ad Hoc Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by connecting via Zoom as described on the meeting agenda. It's a mouthful. All right. I do not think that we have, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but did we receive new minutes from the meeting 2 months ago?
That was me, right?
Was it?
No, I think that one was me. And no, I didn't. And I'm sorry. I'll make that this month. It's been a little long.
Oh, wait, I have.
Oh, wait, the meeting before the one where I did minutes, you mean?
Well, we didn't have a meeting last month, which was October, and we have September minutes. Huh.
I feel like I owe you something. Is it really that far back?
It's, yeah, well, we didn't, yeah, because we didn't have a meeting last month because of all the election stuff that was happening. Okay. Well, then I'm not entirely sure whether we have minutes to approve or not, but we do have these 9-10 RCV implementation minutes, which look great. So do people have these? Are we ready to approve them, or do we want to kick that down the road for a minute?
I probably have them, but I don't have them in front of me.
Okay. Do other folks feel, let's wait. For next meeting, let's just say, take a look at the September 10th minutes. I'll send them out to everyone again, read over them, and we will approve them next meeting.
Are those the ones that I did, Dan? I don't know.
Let's see, regrets, none.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Well, they look really good, so appreciate that. I just haven't read them yet, so that's cool. So we'll push approval of minutes the next meeting. Committee secretary position. Would anyone like to be secretary for this group on a permanent basis?
I think the rotating thing mostly has been working.
Yeah, more or less. It's just annoying.
Whose turn is it?
Well, let's see. Chris was last. So alphabetically, is that you, Owen?
Possibly.
LMNOP. Oh no, that would be Tom. But Tom, didn't you do it? I don't.
Tom did them for me, I think, before I did them. I think.
Got it. All right.
Is that right, Tom? You did them for me at some point.
Or yeah, and then I just never sent them. I do have them. I just needed to polish them up and send them, and I never did, which is my bad. But I can do it. I can do this meeting if you want me to.
Well, you would be next alphabetically, so.
Okay.
But does that put you doing double minutes for some reason, Tom?
It's whatever.
That's what I was saying. You know, just skip Tom.
Yeah, I could.
Okay, well then.
Oh, and the one thing is that you said you might have to leave at 7, so let me just do this one, and we'll just be back in the order.
And then why don't I do like double minutes or something like that?
Sure, whatever we want to do. I don't really mind. Not a huge thing.
If anybody wants to do my 5 meetings of city council that I'm behind on, that's good too.
Nice. All right, great. So Tom is taking minutes. Is that,
Yeah.
yep, okay, great. All right, so we really have two pieces of business, which are just to keep looking at the ordinance and maybe look at some voter education material stuff. Before we do that, does anyone have any new business that they're going to want to bring up for the end of the meeting?
One thing I just wanted to mention is that budget time is like right around the corner.
Yep.
I mean, I would expect in December, we're going to be getting stuff from the mayor. So just to keep that in mind.
Yep. So I do have a little bit of info on that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. So I have had a fair amount of back and forth with the mayor's office and Jennifer. We have had some good back and forth about what the estimates are. And so money that needs to be spent before June 30th of 2021 will have to be requested appropriated from free cash. Anything after 7/1 can be incorporated into the elections budget. So I'm assuming that for next year, we're going to have pretty much any expense will be requested and appropriated from free cash. This is not official because this group hasn't submitted any sort of budget requests officially, but what I gave her because she wanted estimates was the first year software, hardware licensing cost $8,000. What I told her was I just made up a date which was no later than May 1st, which gave us 6 months before the first election. You know, I said, if it's not possible or extremely difficult before the end of June, let me know and we could discuss this in more detail. But I told her, I basically gave her a hard deadline of May 1st because I don't want more than 6 months of, I don't want less than 6 months of gap there. Subsequent year licensing costs, $800. That's not even something we have to worry about for next year.
Do we suspect that getting 8,000 out of free cash is going to be a problem? That's a bigger figure.
I don't anticipate it would be an issue. We've been getting the council's been getting sort of regular financial, like monthly reports, which is new for us. And while I think that long term there's going to be a lot of sort of broad economic challenges associated with COVID, like at this time we're like surprisingly okay. We generally have some free cash. I mean, I think that it's something that it's important to flag early on because there's going to be there's always competing things. For a small appropriation like that for something that the voters said they wanted, I don't think it's, as long as the mayor's office is okay with submitting it, I don't anticipate any challenge in the council.
Okay.
Good. Well, and they, you know, Jennifer knows all of this as of the communication I had with her was a couple months ago. So, so it's not going to be a surprise.
Dan,
And then the other thing that I did was I said a $4,000 request for citywide mailing expenses before the first election. So, and I told her that, you know, that would probably go out at least 6 weeks before the election. So basically between August 1st and October 1st. And a breakdown of what that was. So it would be about $12,000 from free cash that we would be requesting.
if there's anything that I'm going to have to add to my budget, like the licensing or something like that, I just want to make sure I know about that. So.
Yeah, yes, and it's going to be $800 per year to LHS. And if you'd like, I think I sent it, but I can send it again if need be. I have their invoice, so it's like on their letterhead. And
I'm kind of curious as to whether the costs for programming and printing are going to be more too. I guess I need to talk to Jeff about that.
Yeah, he hasn't mentioned anything about that to me. So I would assume that the maintenance, printing, everything like that would stay the same.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's the printing, ballot printing, yeah, and the programming for the tabulators.
Right.
I just,
Yeah, no, we definitely need to know if that's going to be a different cost. Again, based on he's been, as far as I can tell, pretty forthcoming and straightforward. And
it's just been a while, and I need to make sure.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, if I understand correctly, the $800 cost, will we be incurring that in addition to the $8,000 in this year? So we don't have to worry anything for this year's budget, but in subsequent budgets.
Correct.
At 800.
Okay, so not this fiscal year, next fix.
Correct. Yep. And we are getting this at it doesn't feel like a discount because these are the numbers that we've had for a long time, but we are getting this at a discount because they gave us the wrong numbers. So good for them and good for us. Okay, that's all the information I have. I will follow up with Jennifer after this meeting just to, figure out exactly what the next step is for us to do that, because I think we should do it as soon as possible. Just get it in there, get the money, and the sooner we can pay the licensing fee, the sooner we can get the ball rolling with LHS on. We get a secure laptop to run the software on. We get training from them. It'll be fun. So, all right. So with no other new business, that's the closest thing we had to new business. I guess, we'll say new business, so we'll put it on the thing that I will follow up with Jennifer and report back to the committee next month, hopefully with good news about funding. Oh, I guess before saying that, is there other funding that I should be requesting along with this? So, the $8,000 is the licensing thing. The $4,000 is a combination of printing and mailing expenses for a citywide mailer. Is there money I'm forgetting about? Obviously, it makes sense to check in with Jeff about maintenance stuff, but are there other things?
Are you thinking the $4,000 will be all that we need for the public information part of it?
It's the minimum amount. I feel like it's a that's the absolute minimum cost, I think, of doing a printed mailer and postage to everyone. So it's a minimum, but again, I don't know what I'd like to do events, but I have no idea what COVID's going to look like next year. So. And there's obviously a lot of voter education stuff that could happen on a volunteer basis. But all right, well, keep that in mind. But for the moment, we'll go ahead with those numbers. Keep them there. Okay, so let's talk about this ordinance stuff. Was everyone able to open the PDF that I sent? Draft of November 12th. So it looks pretty different because I did look at the existing city ordinance document. That is a beast, that document. Whew. And so I tried to get this, in line with that. So it looks like that. And I did, I think 100% of the notes that we had from last time. I think even though it's going to be a little bit slow, it's only really 3.25 pages at the moment. I do think we should just read through it because I did change little things here and there. I got rid of one or two things and then I made all the changes that we had. So, I don't think we I think we should just go bit by bit and make sure that we're all cool with these sections. Before we do that, does anyone have any major things that they have about anything from this new draft?
It's not, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Owen. Owen, you're muted.
Just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, says that section X2, to be determined when there are 2 or more candidates listed for the ballot for her contest. How do you have a ranked choice voting vote for 2 candidates? Am I misunderstanding how it works?
Write-ins.
No, it's fine. You have candidate A, candidate B, write-in.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Third choice.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
And that became pretty clear once we looked back at the act, the special act, and the charter revision thing.
That's exactly what the act says.
It's quite clear about there's not really any wiggle room that we have. I had thought that we had some wiggle room as to how to deal with 2, but we don't. And I actually sort of prefer it this way anyway. So,
I mean, it makes it easier if there was ever the case where there's like
there's a write-in, yeah,
late entry, like actually credible write-in in a race.
Yeah. And it means they don't have to declare, in some sort of complicated process. So, okay.
Definitions.
Oh, Barbara, yeah.
I think they should go alphabetically.
The definition?
I actually disagree. I think that for readability, because some of this is technical, I think that it makes it less easy to understand if you're referencing something that hasn't been defined yet. And having to skip ahead to figure out what a definition is, I think doesn't, we talked about readability being one of the goals. So.
Yeah, and we had some discussion about this at one point about the definitions being in logical order versus alphabetical, and the consensus that we didn't vote, but the consensus was sort of that they should be rearranged into logical order, so that anything that referenced a definition, the thing it was referencing appeared above it.
I'd forgotten about that. That might be something when this goes to the city attorney for review that you're going to want to make sure he knows why it's in this order, because
yeah,
you might want to have it different.
That's a good, we could even put a tiny note in that says like definitions are in a logical or in an order of, are specifically not alphabetical. Owen?
Yeah, I was going to say this last time, and I think this is what Barbara's getting at, is that the standard for our ordinances right now is alphabetical order, and I understand what people are saying about that you need to understand one definition before going to another, but we have lots of other city ordinances that you kind of have to skip around. I think it's just kind of a generally accepted format.
Is it a custom or is it a standard? There's a difference.
I don't know. It's the way that all the other ordinance definitions are listed. That's all I could say.
I mean, that's important to be consistent with everything else, and that I think gives it more weight to, if we decide to keep them this way, we should add a little note at the top that says, for reasons of legibility, the definitions are not in alphabetical order in this ordinance.
Yeah, and I personally don't care. I mean, I just
okay.
Yeah.
I do think, like, unless there's some, I mean, I don't know, like, I can see it both ways, but I do feel like, given the technical nature of this document, there's a case to be made for writing this in whatever way makes it most legible, unless there's some sort of rule that we'd be breaking in doing so.
I agree.
That's just kind of my thought.
Yeah.
There are only 9 of them. It's not like there's 3 pages of them.
Yeah. I like them in this order, but I also like the idea of being self-aware and saying this page intentionally left blank, etc. That kind of thing. These intentionally not in alphabetical order. Yeah, Owen?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'd say too, in regards to kind of legibility and stuff like that, is just remember that the ordinance is a legal document, and so while it makes sense to think about how it's read by like a lay person who's trying to understand how ranked choice voting in Easthampton works, this is more kind of a legal codifying of legislation. And so while I understand this discussion, and again, I'm not invested in either way, but it's kind of like, and to Sarah's point, the answer is I don't know about, if it's a practice or just what people are used to doing. But so the way, there is a reason why, the ordinances are kind of written the way they are. I don't know if it's just the practice that we've settled on or going back originally, but just something to keep in mind of that, if there's a desire to communicate to the public exactly how to understand this, there might be more of like a information sheet that could be structured in a way that's understandable to the public. I don't see most of the people in Easthampton opening up our ordinances to read them to understand this. So just something to keep in mind. Because
counter to that, I would say that we're in kind of a unique position in the state of Massachusetts, and should other municipalities choose to investigate ranked choice voting, they're going to look at this ordinance, and people are going to want to be able to understand it. I think that accessibility in the things that we write and the things that we do should be important, and all people should be able to understand it, not just lawyers, not just people like me who spent much too much time thinking about grammar and vocabulary. But, this is people's votes. This is how they interface with their government fundamentally, and they should be able to understand it, and we should be able to make ourselves, we should be cognizant of the fact that people are outside of Easthampton are going to look at this, and that they're going to perhaps take it as an example. So, I looked at the Minneapolis one, it's like a phone book, and like there's reasons for that, but I don't think that we don't necessarily need to go down that same road as Minneapolis, but we should be conscious of who's looking at this and who's reading it and who's trying to understand it.
Okay, I agree with that, but most people who are looking to write an ordinance have some familiarity around ordinances. I'm not sure. Whatever the group decides.
Tom?
I don't want to belabor this point too much because I really don't think that the order is going to make a tremendous amount of difference, like beyond maybe adding a couple minutes to how long it takes for somebody to either look up a definition they don't know or process all the definitions. But I would just say that there's the situation that I want to be cognizant of is that we're going into the first election cycle where we're going to be using this. It's going to be also the first election cycle with a 4-year mayor. It's going to also be an election cycle that may see openings in precinct councilor seats. And as such, I wouldn't be completely shocked if there were races that came down to this. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if there weren't, but I think it's quite possible. And with that in mind, I do think that we should probably write this in a way that it's not going to confuse the, like, we should just be like, we should just be conscious of the fact that there's quite possibly going to be some campaign managers or candidates who don't make a habit of reading our ordinances, who do go and look at this document for that reason. So that's just something to just keep in mind. But again, I really don't personally care that much about the order, and think that there's probably other things that we should be discussing, especially because Owen's on a limited time frame. But like, I just think that just broadly when we're discussing this stuff, while I tend to agree with what Councilor Zaret is saying about sort of the purpose of these ordinances. I also just think we should be keeping in mind the possibility of having a volunteer campaign manager reading this, trying to figure out what it all means and in terms of how they should instruct their voters to interact with the ballot, and that this should be something that should be as digestible as possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna screen share this. Tell me if everybody is able to see that okay. Did that work okay? Mm-hmm. So I have an idea, which is going to be not bold, not italic. So I added a note at the top here. Note: definitions are intentionally not presented in alphabetical order so that terms do not appear before they have been defined.
That's fine with me.
People like that?
I think that there's a larger question here that we should really iron out, and I think that we're pretty much there, but we have to keep in mind that this is a legal document, like Owen's saying, but I think we should make absolutely every effort possible to make this readable, because I know that all of us have gone into zoning or ordinances and we're all experienced with this stuff and we've all suffered, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I think we're all right. Mm-hmm. And we just have to keep that in mind and just keep an eye towards lay people, which is a weird term to use here.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments that have been made so far, and I don't think that I don't actually hear any disagreement, which is that this is a legal document and needs to be treated as such, and it's also a document that may attract more scrutiny than usual for an ordinance, and therefore sort of needs to be conscious of its presentation. And
yeah, and we should take extra effort to present it properly.
Yeah,
I think all ordinances should be like that, but particularly here.
If the government can fine you for not doing it, then you should understand what it is.
Yeah. Owen?
Yeah, not to belabor this, I was just kind of speaking to kind of existing practice and not saying we should do it one way or another. I was just making a kind of a general comment and not disagreeing with anyone.
Yeah. So I added that sentence, which I like. And I'm just gonna go through this. We're just gonna go through it. We did it last time. We're gonna do it again, and we're gonna address anything that comes up. So, Section 1, definitions. Note: definitions are intentionally not presented in alphabetical order so that terms do not appear before they have been defined. And just in this case, either raise your hand or say something and we'll stop and we can talk about any comments. Ranking: the number or numeric position assigned on a ballot by a voter to a candidate to express the voter's preference for that candidate. Ranking number 1 is the highest ranking, ranking number 2 is the next highest ranking, and so on. Overvote: the voter marked more than one candidate for the same ranking. Continuing candidate: a candidate who has not been defeated. Exhausted ballot: a ballot that does not contain a highest ranked continuing candidate. Continuing ballot: a ballot that is not an exhausted ballot. Instant runoff: the sequential tabulation process that is used when no candidate receives a majority of the highest ranking votes. Round: one instance of the instant runoff process in which all continuing ballots are tabulated. Skipped ranking: the voter left one or more rankings blank, but then ranked a candidate at a subsequent lower ranking. And plurality: the voting system in which a candidate with the most votes is declared the winner, even if they do not have a majority.
He left.
One thought.
Yep.
Did that say plurality voting instead of just because a plurality is an instance where one person has the most votes.
Yeah.
But
Plurality voting, and I will say to not be duplicative there, the system. So plurality voting, the system in which a candidate with the most votes is declared the winner, even if they do not have a majority. Or maybe it should say voting system. I don't know. Voting system. It's a voting system.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good call.
Is tabulated the right word that we want to be using here?
As in the sequential tabulation process that is used when no candidate receives. And
I mean,
here and here, these guys.
yeah, I mean, tabulation kind of means putting it in order, right? I guess.
No, tabulation means counting up.
Does it?
I think that's a good word for it.
like
Yeah.
if I'm, it's funny, I've got a big statistical program running in the background right now on my computer. And if I hit like tabulate and then a variable, what it'll do is show me how many observations of each. Like if I say tabulate age, it'll show me how many of these people are 1 year old and how many of them are 2 year old. And so in the same way, if you tabulate votes, it's how many votes went to candidate A, how many went to candidate B, and so on.
Okay. Because,
It's to put them into a table is to tabulate.
that right. That was what, because I went and looked up the word and that's what it comes out to. And that's why I was wondering if it really meant counting like we want it to, but that's fine.
Owen?
So to kind of speak to what we were talking about before, if there's a term like tabulation that is causing discussion or confusion among this group, should we either A, define it, or B, choose a different word?
Could we say counting process?
I mean, that's probably the most straightforward, just to speak to kind of our rationale around this. I'm just putting that out there, just with that, I don't know. If we're worried about people reading this document and having any questions about anything, what do you think?
Would assigned work instead of tabulated?
I think counted is fine. I mean,
That's what we're
don't.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just changed both tabulating and tabulated to counted. I think it reads great. So
All right, success.
there may be more tabulates further down, but
We'll keep an eye on
We'll
Yeah.
count them.
it.
so another thing you'll notice is that I added these little section headers. My guess is that like most legal documents, these are not considered to be part of the legal document. But because other ordinances had them, I added them in because I figured it would be nice and easy to do that.
Would that be capitalized, RCV? Or is it not a noun in that proper noun?
Oh, I haven't been capitalizing the phrase unless it's an acronym.
I have no idea, to be honest.
I don't think so.
Where there's not any ambiguity, I wouldn't worry too much about
I
it.
think
And
it's fine. I don't think it.
I mean,
I've capitalized things that are like positions, city charter, names of things, mayor, city council,
Well, you should change district counselor to precinct
precinct.
because
So regarding capitalization, if we're going there, I will go there. Mayor should only be capitalized if you're referring to the specific mayor, right? But as a general office, elections for mayor. I believe that's correct. And so like the city, if you're referring to the city of Easthampton, you would capitalize. But if you're just referring to a city, it would be.
Got it.
That
So,
makes
but in
sense.
this case, because it's the Easthampton mayor, we would capitalize it, right?
That's an interesting question. I mean,
pretty
I
sure
suppose you could view it either way and it wouldn't actually matter so much, but maybe somebody could make a different argument. Anyway, I'm not saying.
Right. Well, how does it appear on the ballot where it says like election for mayor or election for senator, like on a ballot? How does it appear?
So
It's all in all caps.
I think they're usually all caps, yeah.
Well, in the act, it's not capitalized, so. Nor is charter.
Oh,
I think
Nor is ranked
Sorry.
choice voting. Like nothing is capitalized in this act. Sorry, I spilled water on my binder, and so everything's a little soggy.
oh
And
no.
I know, right? The whole thing. Yeah, it looks like capitals. There's not a lot of capitalization going on in this act.
Yeah, so I did a quick Google search, and it's subject to be wrong, but Sarah, what you're saying is right. And in this case, unless we're replacing, you could do the test by saying elections for Nicole. And that's not what this thing is saying, so it wouldn't be capitalized.
I
And
believe.
I'm
I
sorry.
got- Yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah.
Oh, and I saw your hand up.
Sorry, I was having problems with Zoom. My one question, and this is getting nitpicky. I just have to look at some of our other ordinances, and this may sound silly, but sometimes you actually have to define what you mean by city. In other words, city shall mean city of Easthampton. But I'll just put a pin in that and I'll look. No, you don't think so, Barbara?
I don't, no, I don't. It's within the city chart, the ordinances. I think that you'd have to define like everything. I think that. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that if it's defined in the charter, then
Yeah.
this is subservient to the charter.
With these sort of technical points, another thing to consider is that we're going to have to run all of this by the solicitor, right?
Yeah.
If anything just flies in the face of how ordinances should be written, or how things should be, like sort of like really technical stuff, what things should be defined, obviously we want to get it as close to right the first time because the city solicitor charges by the 15-minute interval. But also, like, I wouldn't overly stress this little stuff because, like, as long as the content is right and it needs to say and says it clearly, I think we're going to be okay. Because the other stuff, if we get anything egregiously wrong, that's why we have a city solicitor to some extent.
Make them earn it.
All right, so for the moment, I will uncapitalize these things, if that seems good.
Well, I think city charter would be capitalized, but
If we want to nitpick, I think city, but not charter.
really?
The city charter is the proper name of a document.
Okay, cool. Yep, good point. Good point. Yep.
Okay, so city charter is capitalized, but mayor is not. And each precinct city council representative is not?
The city
think
council is
not.
a place, right?
I think you would
I
say
don't know.
precinct city councilor, not city council representative.
Yeah.
So, keep it to the title of what it is.
So you're saying city council is a proper noun, Barbara? Is that what you're saying?
The
City
But a city-
councilor isn't, though,
Correct.
Yeah.
because we're not referring to a specific city councilor. We're referring to a generic office.
Yeah.
So
I love and
we
hate
pulled
this
that one
so
out
much.
from under your feet, Barb.
Pretty good. Click this. I'm just looking in the ordinance to see if it says mayor or something.
All right.
Mayoral salary. Oh no, approved by mayor, capitalized, but it's talking about a specific mayor.
I'm the one who does that, so, it doesn't mean it's right.
Oh, okay. We have the authority right here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep going. I like this. So we'll if we're gonna we can decide as we go how this should look. So, So section 2, when ranked choice voting is applicable. A, as per the city charter, municipal elections for mayor and for each precinct city councilor must be determined by the ranked choice voting process described in this ordinance when there are 2 or more candidates listed on the ballot for that contest.
All right.
B, plurality voting must be used when fewer than 2 candidates are listed on the ballot for that contest.
Perfect. It's even consistent with the change we made earlier, which always is nice.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, yep. I'd already said that. So, section 3, ballot design, instructions, number of rankings. I'm going to say voter instructions. Instructions, sort of general.
Instructions to a voter.
Yes. Instructions to voters. A, so city clerk here, capital?
City,
Come on.
No, it's not the specific city clerk. It's just us, the city clerk, whoever they may be.
In other places in the ordinances, it's capitalized. I don't know. I'm just breezing through this,
Right.
but
That's the reason I capitalized it.
It doesn't mean it's right.
Doesn't mean it's right.
no, I know. And I bet there's other places where it's not capitalized. So I'd have to, yeah.
We'll let the ordinance review committee catch all those.
Nice.
yeah, there you go.
Pull out my strunk and white.
All right, so I'm gonna not capitalize it for the time being. Right? Yes? Okay. Silence means yes. A, the city clerk has these, so this section, by the way, I did do some simplifying of. A, the city clerk has the sole authority to determine or approve the design of ballots containing any ranked choice voting contests. I added or approve because, you know, the city clerk might not actually be doing the designing.
Yeah, well, I'll get it from LHS and then I'll approve it.
B, specific voting instructions must be presented above or next to the first ranked choice voting contest on a ballot. C, the ballot must be designed in a manner that allows voters to rank as many candidates as they wish, up to and including all listed candidates and at least one write-in candidate. If the ballot design software, the overall size or shape of the ballot, the tabulation machines, I think this is an appropriate use of tabulation because they are literally called tabulation machines. Or any other associated piece of election hardware or software would prevent the ballot from allowing voters to rank all candidates. The city clerk has the sole authority to limit the ballot to no less than 10 rankings. This is something we talked about last time, having the no less than 10, which I think is a great idea. It's very clear.
We did speak about that, but how should we define how that should be? I mean, if we have 15 candidates, then the city clerk has really chance to choose 10 and eliminate 5.
No. They're not eliminating candidates. They're just providing up to 10 rankings among those candidates.
Got it. Sorry.
So that's okay. Yep. I had a moment too where I was like, wait.
It might actually be clearer if you say among those candidates or among all candidates.
Let's see. There is the sole authority to limit the ballot to no less than 10 rankings.
Positions?
I don't think we want to throw that in there if we've already defined ranking.
And 10 rankings among all candidates?
If
Could you
nobody
say something
else
like
that's fine. But
limit the ballot so that no less than 10 candidates may be ranked.
I think what we need to be clear with the language here is not that we're limiting the names on the ballot, like Chris just pointed out, but that we're limiting the number that you can rank. Right. We want that to be clear to people. So we don't have people going, well, the clerk can throw out whoever she wants, which is not true. Right. So we need to make sure that we say that.
I think, Tom, so can you repeat what you said? Because it sounded good.
So the city clerk has the sole authority to limit the ballot so that no less than 10 candidates may be ranked.
Love it.
No, I don't like throwing the candidates in there. I think that,
Yeah, to me, that almost makes it a little bit worse.
yeah.
So that the voter may rank.
Up to their first 10 preferences.
Oh, I see. Okay, so this is the sole authority limit.
No less than their first 10 preferences.
Is it less or fewer in this case?
Fewer.
Discrete object, yes.
Fewer. Voters.
This is fun. I like grammar play.
You should have been a Latin major.
Well, I did take 3 years of Latin.
There you go.
I
That's
also
why you
took
like
3
it.
years of Latin.
There you go.
We could start a Latin club.
Sure.
Yeah, how do you say no less than 10 candidates? What if we have this be more negative? The city clerk has the sole authority to limit the ballot to no less than 10 rankings without limiting the number of candidates?
Or we could go with another sentence, right? No less than 10 rankings. The number of candidates may not be limited. Something like that. We could add another.
I think that does a good job.
And is it fewer there instead of less? Did we decide that? Or no?
Fewer.
Oh, no fewer. No fewer. Sorry. Yep. No less is such a phrase, but yeah. It would
May not be limited.
I'll tell you really briefly. My ninth grade English teacher went on a campaign against our local supermarket because they said 10 items or less, and she insisted that they change it.
That sounds like something my Latin teacher would do.
Yeah.
If you want to piss off grammar people, it's really good to correct them when using less or fewer, but incorrectly, like the wrong way. Yeah, they get really upset. It's fun.
I will say that I tried to be precise with my grammar, but I would not criticize somebody else for their grammar because that's rude. So I'm not making a comment on anyone who may have made an error here. It's just that I like to do it correctly.
Okay, I like this. City clerk has the sole authority to limit the ballot to no fewer than 10 rankings. The number of candidates appearing on the ballot may not be limited. Clear. Okay. Section 4, look at this, tabulation. Exhausted ballots, breaking ties.
Actually, can we pause a second? Because the number of candidates appearing on the ballot may not be limited. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that more. I don't know. Maybe I'll want to talk about it more later, but
Okay.
Continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No,
There's something that's not quite doing it for me. I just need to think about it. All right, please.
It could. So another idea here is that it could be like a note that says like
No.
This
Limiting the number of rankings will not limit the number of candidates that appear on the ballot.
Right.
Something like that. Right, because we're like, we don't want people thinking they can rank as many write-ins as their heart desires or something like that, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just envisioning some sort of weird candidate bonanza of anyway.
So I wrote, note, limiting the number of rankings does not exclude any candidates from appearing on the ballot.
All right, I like that better.
People like that?
I think, yeah, a note is good. Thank you.
It could also be must, as it could be an imperative. Limiting the number of rankings must not exclude any candidates from appearing on the ballot.
Well, then that's not a note. All right, we're in this place.
No, you're right. That's not a note.
We were headed the same place.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know that was a little picky.
Oh, it's okay.
Election day should be capitalized.
What should be? Must?
Election day should be kept. I'm ahead. Reading ahead. Sorry.
Oh, we're not even there yet. Okay.
No, sorry.
We're getting there. We're getting there. So this right away says tabulation. So I know that's going to be controversial. Exhausted ballots, breaking ties.
We just need to define tabulation, and then we don't have to worry about where it appears.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Let's see. It's a great definition of tabulation. Arrange data in tabular form.
How about in this case, it's just like counting the votes.
Why don't you counting
The
ballots?
process of counting ballots.
Well, no, because you're not counting the actual number of ballots. You're counting the votes marked on them.
I guess the process of assigning votes to candidates.
Oh, that's pretty good.
The process of counting the number of votes cast for each candidate.
Love it.
Yep.
Assigning, I think people could interpret that as like somebody, fiddling with the numbers. A la. Never mind.
Each continuing candidate?
Well,
No, because it's so general.
I think it's.
Yeah, you're still counting votes for the exhausted or the candidates
You
that
are,
don't make the
that's
cut. So.
So do we want to change counting here back to tabulation? Sequential tabulation process?
I think counting is better for.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when you throw sequential in there, when you get sequential and tabulation and process all in a row, I think people's eyes start to go.
Let's leave counted up here. I like that. But we can have tabulation here. I don't have.
Yeah. Now tabulation is fine.
Okay. So A, after polls close on election day, which you think should be
It's a
capitalized?
holiday. It is a holiday, and holidays are capitalized.
Nice. After the polls close on election day, election officials in each polling location tally the ballots either by hand count or by using an approved tabulation system as authorized by the city clerk, and record the first choice votes for all ranked choice voting contests in substantially the same manner as for contests determined by plurality.
Do we need that? The insubstantially part?
I added this from our last draft, and the reason I added it was because we did the election and we got all the receipts printed out, and it occurred to me that things might look different on the receipts. Even if they don't look different with our current machines, a machine could look a little different when it does the first. Whatever, it could print out more information than we would want. It could, whatever. So I kind of just thought, like, if it says substantially the same, then, if you have a little thing that the precinct clerk writes the first round totals on and then signs it, and the warden signs it, and you post that up, like, it just gives a little wiggle room for, like, oh god, these machines don't turn out the RCV elections exactly the same as the other ones, and so but the ordinance says it has to be in the same manner, and blah blah blah. I just figured putting substantially in there kind of covers our bases on that, and gives some freedom to just kind of post the results, even if they're not formatted or printed in exactly the same way. Anyway, I don't know if it's totally necessary, but that was my thinking.
So, Dan, you did it here in another place where you kind of put hand count right front and center before the tabulation, and I don't. That makes me a little like. I mean, I know that we do hand count some ballots, but putting it front and center like that before the tabulation makes me a little nervous.
Okay.
I don't want people out there to think that, oh, we're going to be, maybe we better hand count all of these.
No, you're right. And you know what? It's not even necessary, because hand counting would be
An approved tabulation.
tabulation system as authorized by the city clerk. So we don't need it at all. After the polls close on election day, election officials in each polling location tally the ballots using an approved tabulation system as authorized by the city clerk and record the first choice votes cast. for all ranked choice voting contests in substantially the same manner as for contests determined live.
I like that better.
That's a good call. I like that. I like that more too. I'm just going to plug in my computer. All right. Bye, Owen. All right.
The same thing on B. I don't really like that by hand there either.
All right. If no candidate receives a majority of the first choice votes cast for that contest based on the election returns provided by the polling locations, an instant runoff is conducted under the supervision of the city clerk in successive rounds. The instant runoff may be conducted at a central municipal location using an approved tabulation system as authorized by the city clerk. I think this might be the only may I had in the whole ordinance, because I didn't want to force it to be a central location, but it also seemed appropriate because it certainly will be.
It most likely will be.
Yeah, it definitely will be. But I also didn't want to do a must there because I figured,
Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah. Okay. It just felt like an area where discretion.
It lets the city clerk manage their own work, which is appropriate.
Yeah. C, if software is used to perform the instant runoff tabulation, the software configuration settings that are used to tabulate the results must be in full compliance with every aspect of this ordinance. So this comes to an area that it was greatly reworked as a result of our last conversations. So I tried to just tease things out and to make them more simple and more individual ideas at a time. So do people like this, the software settings thing?
My understanding is basically it says that the software settings have to comply to this ordinance, rather than the big discussion we had about how to dictate software settings. Right? Exactly.
Yep. And that just means that everywhere that is
maybe
that affects the results, the ordinance will address, and it will. So this is separated out into a separate thing. D, a summary written in plain English of all software configuration settings that have any potential to affect the results must be posted on the city website prior to the candidate filing deadline and posted at each polling location. Again, that's something that this committee will write and approve, not something that...
The candidate filing deadline, you mean the deadline for them to return nomination papers?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that phrase, candidate filing deadline, is the state uses as that date. Do we want to clarify that?
Well, to me, it seemed you're talking about the candidate filing deadline and posting at each polling location. Yeah, I guess that's okay. I don't know who would write that. I hope it's somebody, not me.
We write it. This committee writes it. Yep. It'll be an appendix to this ordinance.
Is there a reason that you want it posted at each polling location? Or is it just sufficient to post it at City Hall and the website?
I like it posted at the voting location.
Is there any technical data currently posted at a voting location besides like the list of everyone's street? And their
there's all the instructions to voters of how to mark your ballot, things like that.
Yep.
This could just be another thing we throw up on the wall.
Yeah. I actually feel strongest about it at polling location. I thought it would be convenient to have it also be on the city website.
I mean, I think more important at the polling locations is an example of how people would mark their ballot.
Oh, yeah. And we will definitely have that, but I don't think that's in the scope of the ordinance. Yeah. I think that's...
I'm not sure how many people are going to care about software configuration settings.
Very few. But as Tom and I talked about in a previous meeting, I think I mean, at least both of us, and I think the committee kind of came to the idea that having these be transparently explained in plain English was, even if it's not going to satisfy a lot of voters or apply to a lot of voters, I think having it there is going to be very instructive and very transparent in terms of how this counting process works.
And I think if anyone wants to get confrontational regarding it, like it would allow poll workers to just kind of point at the wall and be like,
exactly, yeah.
Not to drive this point home too far, but when we had the election about this in 2019, one of the points that was made by the No campaign, which I took immense issue to, the idea that these ballots could be statistically manipulated, that you could go in and tweak the settings and it would mean that somebody else would win, and that the city could use that to pick and choose their candidates. And like, whatever you want to say about ranked choice voting, that's simply not true. And so I think in some cases, even if we overcorrect here, I'm fine with that, just to make it absolutely crystal clear that like, this is how this is going to go. Every aspect of this has been explained in clear English. You as a voter don't actually need to understand it. You just like go in and pick your favorite person and your second favorite and so on, and it'll shake out the way it's going to shake out. But if you are worried that there's some sort of shenanigans going on, here's exactly how this is going to work. Yep. You know, and it was the same when we did our city council special election using ranked choice voting.
that was fun.
Something that, I mean, many of you were there. That was something that I really tried to drive home and being like, so this is how this is going to go, and here's how this works. And in the case that there's a tie, here's how the tie gets broken. And does everybody understand that perfectly? Are there any questions? Because once this starts going, like, I don't want to be like, what? I thought, I just think, making sure that just giving people that information, I think most people are just going to trust the process, but just giving them that wealth of information is going to, I think, protect you from any sort of totally unfounded concept. Like what they were suggesting is impossible, but it's easy to refute by just saying what's going to happen.
Yeah. And it builds trust. The transparency helps create that trust, I think. And it is true that if you do tweak a setting and run it again, it could change the result. So
Your coin flips or whatever.
Well, not even just tie breaks, just, how are skipped rankings determined,
Yep.
Okay, so it sounds like we're pretty much on the same page about this, barring that it's not going to fall in Barbara's hands to write. Okay. E, in each round of the instant runoff, the number of votes for each continuing candidate is counted. Each continuing ballot counts as one vote for its highest ranked continuing candidate. Very nuts and bolts one. We didn't even use tabulation in there. F, in any round, if a voter has not ranked any continuing candidate, their ballot is exhausted for that contest only. Once a ballot becomes exhausted, subsequent candidate rankings marked on that ballot are not counted for that contest. Okay.
Do you want to perhaps add a note in English? Like, I don't know, like what? But I think that a reader might not quite understand what that means.
This constitutes a skipped ranking. I don't know, something like that.
Constitutes a what?
A skipped ranking.
Oh, well, that's in the next section, like literally the next subparagraph talks about that. Talks about these exhausted.
I guess actually I take it back. It's a little thought from anyone that'll be understood, I think.
I mean, at some point we can't ignore the topic of exhausted ballots, and it is like an area that people who are against ranked choice voting like to make a big deal about. The reality of an exhausted ballot is the voter's decision to decline to continue to express preference, which is very much like going to the election, for example, in Georgia, casting a vote, and then not going back during the runoff, you know? And that is a voter's right. They can go, they can vote, and if there's a runoff, they can decide whether to vote again or not. An exhausted ballot is just a situation where that voter decides that they do not want to participate in the runoff. I don't think that that's really important to get into in this document. It kind of just is what it is. I understand the kind of desire to give it a little bit more
Yeah, you're right. Totally.
thin, but I don't know how to do that succinctly. I'm open to ideas, but if it occurs, if anyone figures out a nice way of kind of addressing that further, I'd love to put it in.
I mean, one thing that maybe it doesn't change anything, but one thing that I've said a lot when discussing exhausted ballots, and maybe we can leverage it here, is that the reason a ballot is exhausted is because the candidate has given us no way of discerning what their preference is among the continuing.
Voter has given
The
us.
voter,
Yeah.
Voter intent.
Yep.
Since there's no way for us to discern the voter's
Intent.
intent.
That's it. That's it.
Because that's the idea. It's like it's not like we want to. Like, it's not like we don't want your vote to count. Like there's not enough information here for us to know who you prefer out of the remaining candidates.
With certainty?
Emailing. That's not what I meant to say.
Yeah, I think that covers my concern. It's not. Yeah.
I don't like, there's something weird about that. That the ton of voter regarding the remaining candidates cannot be determined with certainty. Regards to.
Can you imagine doing this before word processing?
Oh my lord, no. I think you'd have like a little crew of scribes who just do it for you.
Scrap paper everywhere.
Yeah. An exhausted ballot indicates that the intent of the voter in regards to the remaining candidates cannot be determined with certainty. I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
Just if there's somebody reading this and they don't understand why, like, okay, so somebody writing someone first and somebody last.
Yeah.
Well, why doesn't it count for that last person? Well, we don't know if you just forgot all those in-between rankings or if you were trying to suggest that you actually hate that person.
Right.
Since we don't know, we're just not going to count that vote.
I think more interpretation than this is falls onto voter education, but I don't have a problem with the sentence here. An exhausted ballot indicates that the intent of the voter in regards to the remaining candidates cannot be determined with certainty. All right, cool. G, the following special ballot situations are handled as follows. Overvotes. When a voter marks more than one candidate for the same ranking, then those rankings are ignored and the ballot is exhausted. Skipped rankings. When a voter does not mark, skips, or leaves blank one or more consecutive rankings, then subsequent lower rankings are ignored and the ballot is exhausted. We will have to rewrite this if the software ends up supporting our sort of preferred one skip thing, but for the moment. Duplicate rankings for the same candidate. When a voter marks more than one ranking for the same candidate, then the ballot is counted for the highest ranking of that candidate. If a candidate with a duplicate ranking is defeated, then the vote for the next continuing candidate ranked by that voter is counted in the next round.
Do you think that some people, if they read that and they say, oh, the ballot is exhausted, that they might think that the whole ballot, not, rather than just that race, is like,
I think we covered that up further.
That is why we added their ballot is exhausted for that contest only.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right.
That's important because that was
and also one ballot is exhausted subsequent candidate rankings.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was another thing that was said during that campaign was like, oh, you're going to make one mistake and they'll throw out your entire ballot, which obviously is not the case.
We could also add a thing here that says an exhausted ballot does not affect votes in, this is badly worded, previous
Votes
rounds.
cast for any other office.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking of for that contest only, I feel like it's pretty clear, but the idea that if your ballot is exhausted, it's not retroactively throwing your votes in that contest away,
Right, like if you voted for somebody and that person ended up being the winner, then you can really do it. Then you're fine.
Yeah, if you mark 1, 2, 4, 5, and it goes to round 3, and your ballot is exhausted, it doesn't affect your votes for 1 and 2, even in the same contest. It's an exhausted ballot, but your votes for 1 and 2 are still your votes. Yeah. I think that's what Barbara was kind of getting at. But I don't know. This might be more than.
I mean, right now we just say it would be a blank. But I don't.
Right.
Yeah. Rather than.
Yeah, a blank. Yeah, a blank in what now is the same thing as an exhausted ballot, or an exhausted.
It might be worth noting somewhere else, maybe towards the beginning, that once a vote is counted, it will not be replaced. It's really a tough thing that.
Yep.
It opens up more doors than I think we close.
You say a ballot does not contain a highest rank candidate, which is a good definition of it. I don't know the best way of wording that or where exactly to put it.
Maybe we should put a pin in it and just let it marinate a little bit.
I don't think that what's here is wrong.
It's not. No.
But additional clarification that we might want.
Yeah, it's just, there's the ballot and then there's a ballot.
Right.
Yeah. And you just don't want people thinking that it's going to affect other parts of what they've already voted on.
Right. Yep.
So when the word ballot is used in two different ways, as it is throughout this document.
And in the whole English language.
Correct. Right. There's one of them isn't capitalized, right? That would sure be low-hanging, easy fruit. No, right? There's no opportunity there.
What
I
about,
don't think so.
what about calling it a race or something like that? Or
Well, so throughout this document, I use the word contest.
contest? Contest is,
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
bad.
But it doesn't really work to say exhausted contest,
Yeah.
which is the problem. So
Because
that's why-
the contest continues. It's your own
right,
participation in it that may or may not continue.
right.
hmm.
That's why we have this. Their ballot is exhausted for that contest test only, which I wouldn't even hate bolding. You know, voter has not ranked any continuing candidate. Their ballot is exhausted for that contest only.
Yeah, that seems fine.
Yeah, that's maybe better.
And the second sentence here also says for that contest. Once a ballot becomes exhausted, subsequent candidate rankings marked on that ballot are not counted for that contest.
Yeah, I like that.
An exhausted ballot indicates that the intent of the voter in regards to the remaining candidates cannot be determined with certainty.
A ballot becomes exhausted.
On an exhausted ballot are not affected.
Other races? No.
That's not the part that bothers me, though. It's the on an exhausted ballot. That other contests,
Just leave it at, you could just leave it as other contests are not affected.
other contests are not affected. Okay. All right.
Because if someone's going to ask other contests in what, then they're either going to come to exhausted ballot or ballot.
Right.
And both are okay.
Yep.
So down at overvotes, could you at the very end of it put the ballot is exhausted for that contest?
Yeah.
And the same thing on the next one?
Mhm.
Skipped rankings, yeah.
Yep. I like that. Cool. Okay. I feel good about this. Doing a little voter education in the ordinance. It's a good thing. Okay. H, at the end of each round, the following considerations are made. So you'll notice that I no longer have nested sub-bullet things. I kind of flattened it out a little bit. And this is a little bit more clear as to the logic of it, in that what I have bolded are the ifs. So you kind of go down the list, and in bold it says, kind of what you're making your decisions on. So if 2 or fewer candidates remain, then the candidate with the most votes in that round is declared the winner. Simple. If more than 2 candidates remain, then the last place candidate is defeated and a new round begins. If there is a tie between last place candidates in any round besides the first, then the vote totals from the previous round are compared and the candidate with the fewest votes is defeated. If the candidates remain tied, this process is repeated until either one candidate has fewer votes or there are no more previous rounds to examine. If there is a tie between last place candidates in the first round, and all of the tied last place candidates have no mathematical possibility of winning the contest, then all of the tied last place candidates are defeated at the same time.
I was wondering about, not that I take issue with the concept of mathematical possibility, but I'm wondering if that could be a place where people might interpret some sort of mystical shenanigans. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like it's a term that could be confusing to people, and people will go, "What do you mean a mathematical possibility?" I mean, there's a possibility, right? Like I don't know. It just seems like something that people could not understand and perhaps take issue with. So,
I agree with that, Sarah. I think maybe if we just change it to or let me ask, does it change anything if we just change it to, and all of the tied last place candidates have no possibility of winning the contest? Which I guess just omit mathematical.
It feels like when you say possibility that like somebody is making some sort of value determination. You know what I mean? Like it feels like somebody is exerting their judgment.
Yeah, you're right.
So let's back up for just a second here and talk about the situation that would allow this to happen. And maybe there's a way that somebody can say this really well. Is let's say that you had a race. One person gets 2,000 votes. One person gets 1,500 votes. And then 3 people get 20 votes each. Okay. Even if all of those people who got 20 votes voted for the other people first and second, and if you let that play out, they would all consolidate as 60 votes behind one of those candidates. Those 60 votes would not be enough for them to be competitive with the two front, with like the next person up. So they just like, there isn't like, it doesn't matter. Like there's no combination of votes. There's no order of preferences that voters could have cast that could possibly allow for those candidates to win. And so what is, I guess that the actual mathematical condition, I'm not saying we go this way, but just bear with me for a second.
Can I interject one thing, which is your example is correct, but it's omitting a slightly more, I think, likely scenario or a more general scenario, which is if candidate number 1 has 2,000 votes and candidate number 2 has 1,999 votes, and the other 3 candidates each have 20 votes.
You're right, because in my situation, candidate 1 just wins.
In your situation, the candidate with 1,500 has no possibility of winning also. But where this matters more is when the runner-up does have a possibility of winning, but there's a tie for last place among people who don't.
Yeah. These might be like rocky right ends or something. The order
that those people, those 20 candidates are eliminated doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you pick this one first or that one first or that one first. None of them matter.
So the actual mathematical condition that we're talking about here is when the sum of the tied candidates' first choice votes do not exceed the first choice vote total of the next lowest candidate, right? Like that 60 is still just lower than the 1999. So there's no, like, it just doesn't matter.
How do we determine that?
The software currently does.
The software does it automatically.
But that's not a terribly difficult mathematical computation.
No, I know. I'm wondering if since it doesn't matter mathematically, if we just go with the tie breaking in the next bullet point.
Well, no. So here's what we were trying to avoid. This is the whole reason for this, is we do not, under any circumstances, want to do a tiebreaker that is unnecessary.
That's very true.
Because that would involve people coming into Barbara's office and having observers there and flipping a coin and recording the result, all for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to change the result. We don't want to be there.
Exactly.
Fair.
Right.
Guys, when we wrap this up, would it be okay if I requested a 5-minute recess?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Do we have to vote on that?
I don't think so. I think you can just
say 5-minute recess.
Okay.
I actually need to go in a different room anyway, so that works.
Okay. Do I need to do a recording thing?
We can pause it I can.
It's back. Let's start this up again. Barbara, can you hit the record thing?
Maybe I already did.
Oh, good. Okay. I started a sentence here that says, for example, if the sum of the votes for all last place candidates is less than the total for the next highest ranked candidate, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if this is sort of an appropriate thing to put here, but maybe it is.
Shouldn't we say the next lowest ranked candidate?
Yep.
Or it's not really about ranked. It's about.
Oh, yeah.
I'd avoid, or with the candidate with the next
Yep.
lowest number of first choice votes. That's clunky, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Is that right? Less than the total for the candidate with the next fewest votes. Number
Yeah.
of votes.
Right. That's a good example. Be like, then, well, how about this? You could say, right. Then, what if you said instead, I'm just throwing it out there.
Please.
Then the subsequent then the subsequent rankings of, well, I don't know. What I guess I'm trying to say is like, for example, if the sum of the votes for all last place candidates is less than the total for the candidate with the next fewest votes, then there is no like, well, I guess what you're saying is fine. Yeah, then the tied last place candidates have no mathematical possibility of winning. Yeah,
it's sort of a little mini definition, you know?
Right. Yeah, just in case, if you're wondering how this could happen, like, right, we don't need to do tiebreakers for the 12, the 13 people who each got one write-in vote.
Exactly. Yep.
Really, where this is important, right, is like the 40 single votes cast for individual protest candidates do not need tiebreakers.
Exactly.
Would it be
get old?
Would it make sense to say, instead of going into mathematical possibility of winning it, would it make sense to say, for example, if the sum of the votes for all last place candidates cannot affect the outcome of the contest? Something like that.
Cannot, no, like, I don't know. It's something. I know I'm not being very helpful. It just.
Yeah, I mean, I have no bone to pick with what's there, so I mean, it's okay.
No, you're usually pretty good at rewording things when you need it, so. You can spitball it.
Some of the votes for last place cannot affect like, again, if you're not, I like the idea of tying it to a very specific example here, as opposed to sort of just rephrasing what mathematical possibility means, because this is not arguable. If it's less than the total for the candidate with the next fewest number of votes, you can't really, there's no way to spin that. That's just, it is or it isn't, whereas saying cannot possibly is just, I know where you're at with that, because I feel it too, like, but there's not a big difference there between saying that versus having no mathematical possibility of winning. So. I don't know. I'm not. I don't hate this.
I mean, how about? I don't hate it either, but I'll give it one last pitch to try to eliminate that. If the sum of the votes for all last place candidates is less than the total for the candidate with the next fewest number of votes, then the remaining candidates' rankings cannot affect the outcome.
Cannot gain enough votes to have a possibility of winning?
Or affecting the outcome.
What if you said then all these candidates would be eliminated regardless of what other candidates
Oh, I see what you're getting at.
voters rank? You know
So if it was like in the order in which
the order in which they were eliminated would not change the final outcome of the election. Could not change the final outcome of the election.
Right. Anything that, as far as I'm concerned, anything that takes the black box out of it or some magical thinking from the viewer, from a reader's perspective, because we all know it's not, but we don't want to introduce a situation where someone just doesn't know what's going on. Yeah, I think that does it. That pretty much defines mathematically impossible. So it's
if the sum of the votes for all last place candidates, let's be consistent, all tied last place candidates. Sum of the votes for all tied last place candidates is less than the total for the candidate with the next fewest number of votes. In the order in which the tied last place candidates are eliminated cannot affect the result of the contest.
And the important thing here is that it says, for example, because it's not tying anything to anything.
Yep.
It's just helping the reader.
Yep. I like it. I'm good with this.
I like it too.
Cool. All right. If there is a tie between last place candidates in the first round and any of the tied last place candidates do have a mathematical possibility of winning the contest, then the tie must be resolved by lot in accordance with the city charter. Oh, no, we're keeping that calculated. And the candidate chosen by lot is defeated, which I know is kind of weird, but that is what the city charter says. The result of any tie resolutions decided by lot must be recorded and relied upon in the event of a recount. Cool.
So yeah, it is confusing to say the candidate chosen by lot is defeated. I know that's what the charter says, but it might make sense to reorganize the sentence to say then the tie must be resolved by lot and the candidate chosen by lot is defeated in accordance with the city charter. That way, we're not the people who are making that poor choice of having that happen.
Got it. The time is yourself by.
Assign blame where it's due.
Can't believe we didn't catch that in charter review.
I feel like we spoke about it, didn't we?
It's all a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we definitely spoke about it, and we just couldn't. I mean, at the time, there was no guarantee that ranked choice voting was going to pass. And
Well, I mean, candidates could be chosen by lot. I don't in a multi-winner contest. Anyway,
yeah,
I suppose any contest could be tied.
Oh, totally. Yeah. The tie breaking has nothing to do with ranked choice voting.
Yeah. Anyway,
Any kind of.
and maybe we had crazier things to deal with that day. I don't remember.
I guess
I
it
remember
makes sense
specifically like saying like that's kind of weird, but yeah, okay.
Whatever, it's a way.
I guess the lot choosing is done by the short. It's done by a short straw or something, right?
Oh, it's done by the cool metal tubes, isn't it?
Are the tubes just straws, basically?
Barb can explain it. They're super cool.
Just little metal tubes
Metal tubes.
that we used to put the jurors' names in them, and then the selectmen would draw them out.
You know what? It's like the Hunger Games. The person who's chosen has to, like go and probably die. There we go. That's why it's that way.
If you ever go to like a school committee or an at-large race, they have a little event where all of the candidates and their campaign teams get together and they hand out the little metal tubes and they have like numbers in them, and that's the order in which you appear on the ballot. So presumably the same thing where they hand out the tubes and one of the tubes says, "You got eliminated, loser," and the other says, "Congratulations, you can keep going."
There we go.
I guess this does also make sense because if there's more than one tied and you have to do a lot, then you're eliminating that. You're eliminating one first.
How many tubes you got, Barbara?
A lot.
All right, section 5. I believe this stuff is all new. Recounts, margins of victory. A, specific modifications to any statutory recount procedure may be instituted by the city clerk as necessary in order to facilitate the requirements of the instant runoff process. This is like not necessary, but also it feels like not worth.
I'm not sure what this means.
I think we lost Dan for a little bit.
No.
My Zoom has died. Hold on.
You're back.
Am I back? Hold on a
Hi,
second.
Dan.
You're
Welcome
back.
back.
All right. We're good? Okay. So the recount procedure is very specific, and I feel like this is a little bit of a cover for like, things might be a little bit, there might be some extra steps in a IRV recount, and the city clerk can do that. That's all.
But I guess this wouldn't be on the fly. This would be something the city clerk has to do in writing before the election, right? In case they find something that was left out.
I don't think so. No. This would be when a recount needs to happen, and you break out all the guides on how to do a recount, and you
decide on your rules before you start counting.
Yeah, and this isn't even like this isn't affecting the tabulation. This is just affecting you have a table, and 6 feet away from the table is the chair that the person sits in, and the blah, 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 it's like it goes into all that, and it's like in the like, oh, this is written on a piece of paper, and then it's brought over to the table where the people are, and they sign it, and it's like you might have to account for the rounds that go into it. It's like it's more involved. It's not like a new set of rules for how we count.
I totally misunderstood it until you explained all that.
So should that be reworded then?
No, it was my fault that I misunderstood it. I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. Although but you might bring up a good point, which is like this can't affect the counting at all.
Yeah, I wonder if we could say recount procedure differently. Like, I think maybe.
Well, I mean, I think no matter what kind of, whether you're using ranked choice voting or not, the state law sets how you do recounts. And I don't really, I mean, tiny little things you might do different, but I don't know if this is really necessary.
Well, that's why I put it in, because I was sort of like the tiny things, you could get a weird thing where you're following that guide from the Secretary of State.
Well, in which you have to, because it's the law.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, but we also have to have this extra column for round 2.
Well, I mean, I doubt if they don't have examples of like spreadsheets and things like that.
I guess not. But they go into a lot of detail of like,
yeah,
tables and distances and people and I don't know. That's why I put it in, because I was like,
well, maybe
a lot of little details in there.
Maybe it just needs to be reworded, somehow.
If
You know, you probably want to say that, you know, you have to follow or something about the statutory requirements for a recount are still required. I don't know, something like that. Just so people don't think that it's different, that recount.
Okay, so maybe modifications is the wrong word. Specific additions,
accommodations.
accommodations.
1C. Oh no, 2Cs. Pardon me.
That's in my like top 5 words I misspell the most.
I know.
often.
Oh yeah, 2 C's, 2 M's. It's crazy.
Sentence for me is my embarrassing word that I can never get right.
What sentence?
Yeah. I can never remember if it's an E or an A.
Ah,
Mine is privilege. I misspell it every time. I have no idea. I just
Nice.
let the autocorrect guide me.
Autocorrect, take the wheel.
Yeah, this still makes it sound as if I have the legal ability to
yeah.
go outside of the statutory requirements.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm
me
not
too,
sure I
yeah.
like that.
No.
Well, so it begs the question about whether or not the state requirements allows you to have any wiggle room anyway.
Well, they
So-
have to. They have
If
to.
you're gonna if you're gonna have a recount, like in Easthampton, right? Wouldn't you maybe call up the Secretary of State and be like, "Hey, we have ranked choice voting. Can you account for that in your book you send us?" Like, I don't know.
They're not going to update the book though before we have to do a recount.
Are they? I don't know.
No, because we'd have like
Well,
whatever.
I mean, what
We'd
I'm
have a
saying is
week or
maybe this
two.
is the situation where you'd punt and be like, "Help."
Right.
Well-
right. I'm pretty sure the Secretary of State would be like, if you follow the guides, you can make the changes that you need to in order to have it make sense for ranked choice. I mean,
Truthfully, if we had to do a recount, we'd have to bring in somebody who knows how to do a recount with ranked choice voting, because nobody's going to know how. The
Right.
state's not going to know how, and we're not going to know how. So, I
read the guidebook, and it wouldn't be grossly impossible. It would just be,
it's just a
little-
matter of looking at
little
every
extra.
single ballot and, you know.
So you just have to look at them all and make sure that they're all accounted for, and then if the numbers are different, then maybe you need to run them again through the tabulation software. But
Well, usually recounts are all by hand.
by hand. Yeah, I think
so, right. Well, I mean, right. So you have to hand count them, but then like once they're hand count, I guess that's the big question is once they're hand counted and everyone agrees on the number of votes and who they were cast for, can you then run them
no,
through the
Because-
tabulator to
no.
Usually a recount, I mean, whoever is requesting the recount, they can either ask for a machine count again, or they can do a hand count. And I don't think they can do both,
Right.
but they'd have to specify which one they want. And it's always a hand count.
And doing
Yeah,
a
I
hand
guess what
count of an IRV race it's not crazy at all. It's just a little bit different in the sense that you might have rounds,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's
Which is
true.
why
That you really can just put them in boxes and say, okay, we all agree. Here's how many
That's how
votes each
Ireland does
candidate
it.
got.
That's how Ireland does it, and they do it for multi-winner. So
Good. I'm going to get somebody from Ireland to help.
yeah.
Hey, don't we have a sister city in Ireland?
There you go.
We can call them up.
I mean, to be
They'll be like, "We didn't sign
frank,
up for this."
I would be completely comfortable doing a recount for an IRV race. Like it's not like, yes, it would be a little bit different, but it would not be rocket science, So it's something that we could do. This was more a cover your ass of like, in our last conversation, the idea of recounts was brought up. It thought it should be addressed margins. We haven't even gotten to that part yet, but This was an attempt to sort of touch on that, but maybe we don't need A at all.
I don't really know if you do, but.
Okay.
So that was part of my question in asking if the state gives you wiggle room, because if the state gives you wiggle room, if the state does give you wiggle room, they would have a clause in their book, right? Dan, did you happen to notice a clause saying that anything not covered here is at their jurisdiction?
There was no use of the phrase wiggle room in the recount book.
I mean, there was no clause that you remembered saying, like, if something's not covered.
Keep in mind, these books are. I didn't read the regulations. I read their guidebook for recounts, which is still very detailed, but it's not a legal document. It's a manual. And no, I have not read the CMR for recounts, or the law, or the acts that have created them. But
So maybe we can just drop this because it's kind of redundant. Like,
I'm done. I'm good with that.
Claim any authority that we don't have, so it just kind of is what it is.
Okay. So then the next three here are interesting because margin was brought up. So one thing that is interesting to note that isn't in here is that Massachusetts does not have automatic recounts, period. They do not exist.
No.
So there is nothing like if it's under 0.5%, there has to be a recount, nothing like that. However, there is a thing that mentions margins, and it does mention a margin of 0.5%. And honestly, I was a little confused as to what it exactly applied to.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Is it like you have to, somebody can request it under a certain margin, or I don't know?
No, it can always be requested, and the process to request it is by petition. So you need a certain number of signatures. It's like getting something on the ballot or being a candidate, nominating it, whatever. Depending on the race, you need either 100 or 1,000 or whatever. So, but there is a situation where margin comes into play, and I even if we don't exactly know where it comes into play, the reason that I added these three sentences was so that we have some sort of a definition that could apply to whatever other process it is. Because the idea of a margin of victory in a ranked choice voting IRV race is a little weird because you have multiple rounds,
Right.
So what does that even mean? So that's why I did these three, and I'll read them and then we can talk about them. So for the purposes of a recount, the margin of victory for each round is considered to be the difference between the vote total of the defeated candidate and the candidate with the next lowest number of votes in that round. Okay?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's not winning, it's losing. And then B, for the purposes of a recount, the margin of victory for the contest as a whole is considered to be the lowest value from the set of all margins of victory from each individual round. So you calculate the margin for every round, and then the lowest one of those is the margin in the contest, right?
Because if each round was won by 20, there's a 20% difference between the people, then there's
but if one of those rounds was decided by 1%, then the margin for the contest as a whole would be 1%, right? It's taking the lowest value from all rounds. It's a little weird, but it felt like what was the purpose of a recount margin,
Right.
And then I added the C one because it is weird, and to say, for all purposes other than a recount, the margin of victory for the contest as a whole is considered to be the difference between the vote total of the winning candidate and the last candidate to be defeated, right? That's kind of your normal margin, right? But it does not seem like that should be what applies as a recount margin, because you could have a third round that had a 0.5% difference and a final round that had a 10% difference. And it doesn't seem fair to say, oh, only the last round matters, for the purposes of a recount. It feels like any round that's super close should matter for the purposes of recount.
I think you've taken this. You've done a really good job of making this very. You did good. I think this is good.
Good. Okay. And this also, it doesn't need to get into why the margin matters.
Because we don't actually know.
Because it's a little confusing. And I invite everyone to download the recount guide from the Secretary of State, and you'll see that 0.5% margin is in there for something, and it involves statewide and local elections and blah, 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 different processes for the recount. If the margin is less, it's weird. You'll be confused.
Observing arcane signs.
Yeah. But I feel like in the absence of anything else legal, this gives some protection to that third ranked, that third place candidate who, lost by one vote, even though the final wasn't determined by one vote, who says, oh no, the margin in this race wasn't 16%, it was actually 0.1%. And I would agree with that candidate, even if it just wasn't the final round.
I have
I'm giving extra. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a piece of advice, but I don't have the language here tonight. And to be honest, after a long day of coding, I don't know if I'm gonna. I'm a little brain dead. I don't know if I'm gonna reach this language. But one thing that I think there might be value in here of saying something like, I'm just going to throw some really sloppy language out, and we can figure this out. We can sit on it for a month, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm saying, like, when considering a recount, it should be considered.
I lost you for a minute. Can you go back?
Yeah.
About 30 seconds? Because my internet died.
Okay, cool.
A little choppy.
Yeah, something about how, like, when considering the need for a recount, the odds of a different outcome affecting, like the odds of a different outcome affecting the outcome, like the final outcome of the race should be determined. So, like, I guess here's what I'm saying is, let's go back to our example from earlier. You got 2000, 1999, and then you've got three candidates, but this time, you've got two candidates, but this time one of them has 20 and one of them has 19. Now, maybe that person had 25, right? But it's not going to change the final result. And this is why I'm saying that I don't have something like, because I don't know frankly, I haven't read the stuff you've read, but I think there might be some value of putting something in there saying like we encourage people to, I don't know, like, do you see what I'm saying? That, like,
no, I totally see what you're saying. I totally do. And I think we're actually in a fortunately positive situation in Massachusetts because we don't have automatic recounts based on threshold. So it kind of doesn't matter. It's a little bit moot.
Right.
Are there any rules about who pays for them?
Someone who lost 19 to 20 in the first round, and it doesn't matter, can still petition for a recount. And if they get enough things for a petition, then you still have to have a recount. Like,
right. Well, how about this? Maybe we say, and again, I don't want to belabor this point too far.
Yeah.
I'm struggling a little bit.
Okay.
The idea of saying, like, the city should consider, like, because we can do this, right? We with our software, you could call a winner in a round other than the one who's the winner, right? Like, you could say, okay, but in this round we're going to eliminate this person. So
as a hypothetical.
So we could say that hypothetically this round had gone for this different person. How would that have played out? They still would have gotten absolutely slaughtered in that next round because it turns out that none of the other person's voters would have supported them at all. In fact, nobody ranked that person second, not even a single person. So before we get into too much of an intense recount, let's consider the fact that this would absolutely have not changed the And maybe that's something. Maybe that's just something that
I don't know that that needs to be.
maybe it doesn't need to be in the ordinance.
No.
I don't know that it does.
I do think that's just an important thing to keep in mind if were to ever come up and someone were to petition for a recount. If we have a way of objectively demonstrating that, like, if they survived that round, they would have, beyond a shadow of a doubt, lost the next round.
Right.
I think the actual recount petition process, I've never had one in 36 and a half years. And I think it's enough of a burden to get signatures and have a reason and do this and do that it's not going to happen on a whim.
Do you know who pays for it?
It would be the city.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, I think that we're going to have access to the files and how many of each, like if a ballot ranked 1, 3, 4, 2, how many of those ballots there were and how many were 1, 3, 2, 4. Mm-hmm. So I think that what you're trying to prevent, Tom, might just be prevented by the campaigns not wanting to be embarrassed. Like they'll figure out ahead of time what you're saying. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Big-headed people out there.
Also
right,
true.
And I say this as a joke towards myself more than anyone else. You kind of have to be a messed up person to ever run for office in the first place. You're not looking at a whole bunch of like really well-adjusted individuals. But
I don't know. Has an office holder ever decided that they couldn't possibly have lost and refused to concede? I don't think that's ever happened.
No, that would be just so undignified and embarrassing.
No, nobody who's president does that.
Maybe we want to embarrass those people, though.
Well, yeah. All right, we're digressing here. So. Yeah, all right. I
legislate dignity.
My suggestion, but if I come with a better way of putting that, I might bring it up at the next meeting. But I don't think it's pressing.
It's terrible. Man, we could really use some municipal fiber in this city.
Right.
This is embarrassing.
There should be a committee about that or something.
Yeah, this is just ridiculous. I'm gonna have to like switch to my phone's internet if this keeps happening.
Well,
all right.
We've got one more section.
I missed another 30 seconds there. Did we basically decide that this is good as is?
No, I just ripped on the president. It's cool. We're good.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm not convinced that more needs to be in this bit.
Yeah. If I think of a better way of putting this and in a month am convinced that this is something that's important, I'll bring this back up. Okay. Otherwise, assume that I agree. And
okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything like this in other ordinances, but once I started thinking about margins of victory, it felt like an important thing to spell out. So, okay. Section 6, reporting of election results, cast vote records. A, following tabulation, the results of each ranked choice contest must be reported in a manner in which the vote totals from each round are provided, including the total number of exhausted ballots in each round.
Could you put something in there talking about the capability of the software or something? Did you get that?
I sort of wanted to leave it software agnostic, but what
it just, I just want to make sure that whatever the software is, it would be able to do all the things that you're talking about.
Oh, it totally can do this. It absolutely 100% can do what's in A. Yeah. Because we've seen its report. We've seen the reports that software generates, and it's this and more. I just wanted to put, the reason this is in here is I just wanted a floor for any possible scenario where we're not just reporting round X, we're reporting round 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Yeah, you want people to be able to follow the rounds and understand the process.
Exactly.
I would take it
answer at the end.
I would even take the whole, not the language, but the thought a step further, and that we don't want any software that can't do A. So we kind of eliminate.
Yeah.
So this is a good clause to have in here
So
because that limits us.
I think, Barbara, you were just sort of worried that perhaps the software would have to be compliant with this, and the answer is yes, but it absolutely is. There's no question about that. Anything that I put in this whole section, and I know I haven't read BC, is something that I know for a fact the Dominion software absolutely can do and already does by default.
Okay.
Mostly because I think that these are absolute the least amount that any software should be able to do, but I know that it does do that.
Okay, as long as there's reports that are automatically printed out and that are easy to do, that,
Yep. I mean, the for A here, this is basically the spreadsheet that you're already putting out. It may have an extra column or two for round 2, 3, and Dominion, the report spit that out already. But if you even wanted to keep using your Excel spreadsheet, it would literally just be an extra 2 columns for, if there is a second or third round, it would have those totals in it. This gets a little bit more in the weeds, but again, before I read this, let me say that the software that we're getting does this by default already. It has this support. So B, the complete cast vote records from each certified ranked choice contest in whatever data format is the most practical based on the methods and tools that were employed at the time of tabulation must be made available to any member of the public upon request. These records must encompass all rankings as marked on every ballot. So this is cast vote records.
The last sentence has me a little worried because I've actually had people call since the election and they wanted to know if we had record of how they voted.
Right.
And like we keep like everybody's ballot. And so I think that as marked on every ballot makes me a little nervous just because I've had people call thinking that we keep track of how they vote.
Right.
Maybe a little different wording on that.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that too. This does not imply at all that this data is tied to how a person voted. It's
right. Maybe
how it exists.
Maybe it could just stop after rankings on the second ones.
These records must encompass all rankings. Yeah, that could. Well, let me read C, because C is a little weird in that it addresses B. So maybe they should be together as one. But what I wrote here in C, and I can explain why, is cast vote records may be formatted as tallies of every unique combination of rankings marked by voters in a particular contest, as opposed to a list or table that has a separate entry for every individual ballot. Now, I asked this specifically because I know that some ranked choice voting software outputs as a cast vote record data in this format, where it will say, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, there were 102 ballots that looked like that. 2, 3, 1. Okay, there were 112 ballots that looked like that. 1, 2, 3 blank. Okay, there were 1,012 that looked like that. So instead of being like, okay, this ballot was 2, 1, 4, 3. This one was 2, 1, 4, 3. It's a bundle, and that's what C here addresses, because that's very well what someone might get. And it's the exact same information. You could turn C into a list of every individual ballot if you wanted. It's all there, but
now is that something that Dominion does, our software does, or I know ES&S might, but because you don't want to put something that ours doesn't do.
No, and that's why I added this as a may. So this C thing here is may formatted, because basically it's saying that it's acceptable if they are formatted that way. It's acceptable either way. it would satisfy the requirement that cast vote records are made available, whether they are formatted as ballot 1, ballot 2, ballot 3, ballot 4, or there were this many ballots that had these rankings, there were this many ballots that had these rankings. So that's to give the flexibility there. Whether the Dominion software can do this thing in C or not, I think it can, because I think it can export as a BLT file, and a BLT file does these things. I know that it can do, I know because we talked about it with Jeff, that it can absolutely export cast vote records. Like, that's a very basic thing that it needs to do, and it does in several formats. And every single one of those formats is going to fall under either B or C. So, you know, this was to give it the flexibility of it's going to be one or the other.
Barbara, would it make you feel better to have a note at the end of B that says, note all record keeping does not include voter information as with all city elections?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't know why people even think that we would have.
They haven't thought very long about how.
We all have theories on that, right?
I know. I don't think so. I just don't want the results to be more than we're going to be capable of doing.
Right. Which I think is very. I think I have the same concern of writing this, and this is absolutely not anything more than the. I had that very much in mind while writing this. Was what's the minimum that the software does, and just keep it to that, because because the software is going to generate. It might generate interactive things. It'll generate a PDF. It might have charts. It might have visualizations of whatever. It'll probably. I know that it has an audit log of every single step that it takes in every single round. And I don't want to get into any of that because that's kind of specific to the software. But I do think that reporting the totals of each round and reporting the cast vote records are necessary for a fair voting election.
And for people to feel that it's fair.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless,
totally.
yeah. And I think that, again, the same thing that I said about A, the fact that we're codifying these 3 points prevents us from getting software that can't do these 3 points in the future. And I think that's important. Or at least not without changing this ordinance.
Yep.
I do assume that when you get done with the ordinance, we're going to have Jeff look at it to make sure there's nothing in here that is not capable of. Absolutely. Okay.
Yep. There is, based on my current understanding of the software and our current interactions with Jeff, I would bet my life on him having no problems with this one, but even said he will look at this and
okay.
Any changes that we want to make to this stuff? Do you think that C should stand as C, even though it kind of goes back and affects B?
No, I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. Cool. We're at the end. So this is what is left to do. I did not do more stuff about handling of write-ins. That was the one on our list that I didn't get to. And we all decided that this needed to have some language about how write-ins are handled. Specifically, they're kind of handled as a single voter, and a single candidate, and if that candidate doesn't have a mathematical possibility of winning, then, we don't have to reconcile all of them. But I haven't done that yet. We have to write the configuration settings in plain English page, so that's something that the committee still has left to do. And then voter education materials. Now, I put that on the to-do of the ordinance because I was wondering if the ordinance should or should not get into voter education materials. Not specifically voter education, but if we want to specify, like, before the first use of ranked choice voting, the city must send out a blah-de-blah to whatever, or, you know, at the polls, the city must hand a information sheet to whatever, you know, like those would be the kind of things that we might want to put in here. So
Right. Let me actually bounce that one off of the council president, because there's been my time on the city council has been punctuated by a series of disputes, or like friendly, respectful disputes about what the council has the ability to do by ordinance and what they don't. And that my one thing is that sounds a lot like the stuff that we're not supposed to be able to tell the city that they have to do something. We can tell them that they can't do something, but we don't have the authority to order city departments to take a particular action because we're not their supervisor. So this
dictates how the votes are counted, right? This whole thing.
Well, yeah, I guess. But it's. I think there's a difference between saying when you do this, this is how you do it, and saying the city shall spend. Well, this is really the big thing. Is that what we're effectively saying in that is the city shall appropriate funds to do this thing, and that's a point where I think we could get. Like, even though I think there's a broad consensus that this is something that we really need to do, I think putting that in an ordinance will bring up some sort of so I think there might be a way in it talking about notification that is general enough that the city, the mayor's office, and the budget then figures out how to comply with that. Yeah, that's what I said. Let me just bounce that off of Councilor Conniff.
See what Peg thinks of that, because I'd be very curious too.
So some things you got to think of what's going to be in an ordinance. You don't want things that are going to expire, or might be just the first time around, but not going forward. So there might be a secondary document with other suggestions or something.
Yep. Cool.
It might to solve the problem that Tom is speaking of. We might draft a second ordinance that does the things that you want to put in this ordinance regarding that, and then that could be passed as its own thing. Like we're going to appropriate X amount of dollars for this and that. That's not informing a future city. That's not informing a future city council how to act. It's acting on its own.
That wouldn't be an ordinance.
Yeah.
Right. We could write. We could send some sort of communication from this group or from the council to the mayor's office saying, for this, here's how we recommend you do this. Looked into it. Here's what it would cost.
Right.
Like request. But the council has the power to basically say, here's how this is going to go down. For things that are an ordinance, we don't have that when it comes to spending money. That really is the mayor's territory. So, but I think we can. Let me think about this for a bit.
Yeah.
Pick it up the next meeting.
Yeah. Report back because I'm very curious what that conversation results in.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So I think that concludes our discussion of the ordinance in its current form, unless anyone has anything else they want to add. And we will very briefly, if anybody has any thoughts on it.
Don't forget to change the last updated time.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And I do. Stop share.
That is my very, very important contribution.
That was great. Oh, yeah. So we will very briefly see if anyone has any comments on this thing.
So this was great.
This was my very first attempt at something. Again, I don't exactly know what the context would be yet via, mailer, something at the poll, something posted, something handed to people, something on the city websites. This was just sort of a, like, I don't quite get what it is, but here's the beginning of something that can be used as a something. So we don't have to discuss it, but if anyone has anything that they want to discuss about it, we could do that, or we could also bump it to next meeting. Oh, and I'll add another thing too, which is you'll notice that these look a little bit different than the format of the ballot. So I have a little thread with Jeff about what the ballot may or may not look like. It's a little bit more compact than our actual ballots would under the default. So when he has the ability to, is going to look into what formatting, we have. I mean, they can program it custom, but then you have to pay them, et cetera. But like, he thinks that there's some wiggle room there, and so we'll see. But so keep in mind that the appearance of these might change a little bit, because I want them to look exactly how our ballot is going to look. Anyway, that's just a disclaimer. So
Cool.
But if there's no, if you haven't had a chance to read everything on here, please do. And use this as a good jumping off point for how we might want to actually format voter education materials. What isn't on here that people want to see on here, what's too much information, what's, little things, big things, whatever, doesn't matter. This is just a jumping off point. So, cool. All right. I'm getting a sense that we're kind of done. So I think we're done. Before motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Second.
Cool.
Jen, did you have something you wanted to say, though?
Who?
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Me?
Do we need
Yes.
to set a next meeting?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Next meeting. Let's do that before adjourning, because.
I say skip December.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the holidays, or?
Oh, whatever. Could do a month from now.
You don't want to meet on Christmas Eve? That would be fun.
Oh, yeah, no.
So if we're going to do December, I would suggest the 17th, maybe?
I'm doing a whole lot of nothing.
I would be happy with that. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Stuck at home, probably. Does that work for everyone who's present here?
That works for me.
That would be Thursday, December 17th, 6 p.m.
Yeah.
All righty. Cool. We will say that that's that. And all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
One,
Aye.
2, 3. That's unanimous. Guys, we're adjourned. That was a long meeting. Thanks for sticking through it. We're making progress. We're
Yeah,
getting
good
it.
job, Ben.
Thanks. All right.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.